welcome to the news show, the show about the news. As always, I'm your host, Hank Groberg. Today is Thursday, which means it's time for our weekly literary discussion, where we interview noted authors to find deeper meaning in their works. Joining us for today's literary discussion are two very special guests. The first is Elie Wiesel, noted activist, professor, and Nobel laureate, who will be discussing his book, Night, which details his experience in the German concentration camps during the Holocaust.
Hello.
Also joining me is Moises Kaufman, founding director of the Tectonic Theater Project, an NYC-based theater company. Kaufman's play, The Laramie Project, is based on the tragic murder of Matthew Shepard, a gay student at the University of Wyoming.
Hey everybody.
Today we'd like to ask our panel to tell us about their works, but before we begin, panel, would you like to introduce yourself and add a little more detail on your respective backgrounds?
Hello again. As Hank said, my name is Elie Wiesel, and I'm an 89-year-old Jewish writer, political activist, professor, and Holocaust survivor. The book that we're talking about today is Night, an account of my experience during the Holocaust through the perspective of a young narrator, Elie. After I observed a 10-year vow of silence about the Holocaust, I published an account of my life of more than 800 pages in Yiddish, and have since condensed and had it translated into a 115-page English story, Night.
And I'm Moises Kaufman. I'm a playwright, director, and the founder of the Tectonic Theater Project in New York City. Today we're discussing the Laramie Project, one of the most ambitious theater projects I have undertaken. In October of 1998 in Laramie, Wyoming, Matthew Shepard, a gay University of Wyoming student, was brutally murdered. When I heard about the murder on national news, I approached members of my theater company and we discussed how we should respond to the murder. We agreed to travel to Laramie and arrange interviews with as many people connected to Matthew, the perpetrators, the response team, and the LGBTQ community as possible. We wanted to retell the events the night Matthew was attacked and gain perspectives from all sides to explain how the community responded to the national tragedy. We also wanted to emphasize how divided the community was. Not everyone we talked to was as open to gay people as we were. Today, the Laramie Project has been produced in over 40 cities in the United States, plus another dozen abroad. I was also involved in directing a film adaptation of the play on HBO.
It's time to begin our discussion. Our first question is for Elie Wiesel. Elie, daily life in a concentration camp is somewhat of a mystery for most people. It has been the subject of countless movies and books, but few people can even imagine the daily horror that you, as an actual survivor, have experienced. Your book does an excellent job of placing the reader in that setting and helping them get a glimpse through your own eyes. Can you describe for us the importance of telling your story?
You're correct in saying that no one can truly understand the abomination that is Auschwitz. The daily horrors and evil extend far beyond the depths of human hatred. In fact, there were times when I was writing Night when I wondered if the task that I was undertaking, trying to make people comprehend that evil, is impossible. Only those who experienced Auschwitz will know what it was. Others will never know. But could they at least understand? Could men and women who consider it normal to assist the weak, to heal the sick, to protect the children, and to respect the wisdom of other elders be able to comprehend what happened there? And yet, having lived through this experience, I could not keep silent, no matter how daunting it was to speak.
Thank you very much, Elie. That was very powerful. Now to you, Moises. Similarly, I'd like to ask you about the importance of the issue covered in the Laramie Project. How did the murder of Matthew Shepard change the way America views the fight for LGBTQ rights? And why is this a story everyone should read?
Well, the murder was the most visible attack on an LGBTQ person up until that point. It was 1998, and the mainstream opinion was beginning to change with regards to the LGBTQ community. This murder and the human connection that much of the nation felt with Matthew began to spur action among many Americans to stand up for LGBTQ people since the country began to realize that they're not different from others. This performance shines a light on the many issues surrounding the murder. We interviewed hundreds of people from all sides of the spectrum in order to put the audience in the shoes of the people of Laramie to show the divisive nature of the issue. Ultimately, everyone has their own opinions, but we wanted to show that love wins, attacks on people because of their sexual orientation are not right, and it is okay to be part of the LGBTQ community.
Now, Moises, could you go into a little more detail about what happened in Laramie? Who was Matthew Shepard? Why did he die? And what kind of impact does that have on a little Midwestern town?
Well, remember, Hank, that Laramie may be a small town, but it's the third largest city in the state of Wyoming. It's a college town on the Front Range, and word travels fast since it's a close-knit community. One of the people we interviewed for the play explained that there's really only, in their words, 1 degree of separation between everyone in the town. It is that tight. Now, as I touched on earlier, Matthew Shepard was a gay student at the University of Wyoming. There's a moderately large gay community at the school and is one of the more open institutions in town to LGBTQ people. On the night of October 6, 1998, Shepard was at a bar in town when he was approached by Aaron McKinney and Russell Henderson. They asked Shepard if he wanted a ride home, and he agreed. Instead, they drove him out to the rural edge of town where they robbed and beat him and left him on the side of the road. Though neither ever outright said so, McKinney and Henderson likely did this because of Matthew's sexual orientation. Someone found Matthew the next day and he was transferred to a hospital in town, but he died of his wounds on October 12th. The murder sharply divided the town. It had always been quiet and unassuming, and violence, especially hate crimes like this, were almost unheard of. Laramie citizens, for the most part, sympathized with the Shepard family, but as a whole were disgusted with the negative light the media cast on the town following the murder. We wanted to capture this reaction in a first-person manner, which is why we decided to mold the play around the interviews we conducted. The human connection that exists makes the story all the more real for the audience.
The way your team constructed the story from all the interviews was very impressive. Moises, it certainly added a personal voice to this terrible tragedy. Elie, for those out there who haven't read your book, could you give us a peek into the matters discussed in your book? What was life like in a Nazi camp?
I'm not sure that I would call my existence in those camps a life. The story started in the ghettos of Hungary, where we were herded into the cattle cars and shipped off into the Birkenau Auschwitz complex. Once we entered the camp, they separated us by gender, and I saw my sister and mother for the last time, the first of many losses I suffered in those camps. The first thing we saw were babies being burned in the masses, a sight that will stay with me until the day I die. During a horrible winter storm, we were forced to march for scores of miles to Gleiwitz, another concentration camp, and from there, 100 of us were boarded onto another cattle car, and after a 12-day journey, 12 of us left the car and entered the camp. During every leg of this journey, we suffered horrible abuse in every form imaginable. Gladly, however, the American Army liberated the camp on January 27, 1945.
Thank you, Elie. It is very special to be able to hear your story and gain this new perspective on the Holocaust. If you're in the majority who never gets to speak with Elie Wiesel, I strongly recommend you read his book, Night. Hearing Elie's voice as he tells his terrifying story is a truly unforgettable experience. And Moises, I'd like to thank you and your team for the work you did chronicling Matthew Shepard's murder for the Laramie Project. We, as a country, need to take a good hard look at this tragedy and at hate crimes across the U.S. and decide what we can do to prevent this from ever happening again. That's all for today's literary discussion. As always, I'm Hank Roberg. Keep reading, America.